Chapter 11. My Real Father. When God was through with me, the interview was over as suddenly as one would turn off a faucet. I was not allowed to linger or even reflect on what God said. The angels immediately carried me away as if I were a wet rag, having no strength in myself, totally annihilated. I could not even gather my thoughts. The angels carried me back through the second heaven, through the dimension wall, and to the hospital room where my body was laying. It was not until I reached the bed upon which my body lay did I regain my composure. As I regained my composure, I vehemently protested. No, no, I told the angels. God did not answer me. He did not say yes or no to my request. Please, oh, please take me back. I pleaded with the angels. God is a God of order, and He never does anything haphazardly. Since all this entire experience had been planned by God, the angels complied with my request to take me back. God was dealing with me gently and tenderly through His great love, knowing what was necessary for me to experience in order for me to have the scales fall off of my eyes. During the time God was displaying His wrath toward me, I thought this wrath was terrible and painful. I found out later that this is nothing compared to the pain the lost will experience when they receive His everlasting wrath. While en route back to the third heaven, I was beside myself trying to come up with a logical reason or legitimate basis on which to plead my case. God had already told me that my life had been a failure. Therefore, I could not offer my past life as evidence of my intentions to serve Him. Somehow or another, the thought of Hezekiah came to mind. When God sent word for him to put his house in order, he cried and prayed, and God heard him. God extended his life for 15 years. I remembered from my studies about him that Hezekiah was the good old boy type, similar to me. I remembered how he had good intentions in his heart, but how he had trouble translating out those good intentions into everyday living. Since this seemed to be the kind of trouble that I had in my life, I concluded that God dealt with Hezekiah based on those intentions of his heart. Because of this assumption, I concluded this reasoning would be the basis of my plea. Upon my arrival back before the gates of the third heaven, I was brought to the same place from which I had previously pleaded my case. Not nearly so bold this time, I remembered how God's wrath had floored me beforehand. Nevertheless, I had asked God for a favor, and God had not answered. Wanting His answer, no matter what it was, I timidly started pleading my case. This time God did not knock me down, but let me talk. God did not talk to me in anger, but started out answering me in a tone of pity. Before it was all over, God was speaking in sorrow. Upon my plea, by quoting scriptures to God, I began telling Him all about Hezekiah. I told God that I figured out that Hezekiah was the good old boy type, that the intentions of his heart were pure, and that he seemed to be unable to translate out those intentions into everyday living. Here I was, an insignificant nothing, and the smallest creature in all His universe, bartering words with this great and awesome God who had created it all, the wonder of it all. He left it all for just a moment, just to deal with me. He could have snuffed me out in the blink of an eye. He could have left me and left me to be dealt with by an underling. There was an unnumbered host of things He could have done whereby He would not have to have dealt with me, Himself. He did not choose to do any of those things. Instead, He chose to deal with me Himself. Can you imagine it? The wonder of it all. He patiently dealt with me as through His tender love and concern, and patiently heard every proposal I made. While displaying His concern, He showed me how this same thing had been tried before and had failed.